welcome to DeepCrawl. Today we're going to go through the project dashboard, crawl setup and advanced settings in more detail. On this page, your project dashboard, you can clearly see a list of all of your projects. In this account we have a total of 185 projects. Crawls are currently listed by those that are crawling. If you'd like to switch this, you can use the drop down menu on the right hand side and will then order it by active projects. You can also search for and find any projects in the search box just to the left of this. DeepCrawl also intuitively remembers which projects you're searching for most frequently. DeepCrawl then automatically lists your recent searches in the left nav and orders them in terms of most frequently searched. This allows you to log into the tool and easily access the projects that you're actively working on. As I previously mentioned, this is the list view. If you'd like to switch this view, using the icon in the top right hand corner, you can change the layout to more of a tile view. This view gives you a brief summary of the report, as well as any trend data over time. You can also filter which crawls appear on the screen to create a view that's unique and relevant to you. You can then share this view with colleagues or clients by using the share icon and selecting either copy link or send them an email directly into their inbox. The links at the top show which projects are active, meaning which projects that have run at least one crawl during the billing period, any projects that are actively running, and any projects that have been set up with a scheduled crawl. To start a new project, click New Project. This will then take you to the first of 4 steps for setting up a crawl. The first step is to enter your base or top level domain, and DeepCrawl will then automatically detect the canonical version of your protocol. You can then select which one you'd like to actually crawl. Of course, DeepCrawl recommends crawling the one with the initial 200 response code. The next step is to select which data sources DeepCrawl will use to analyse your website. DeepCrawl allows for great flexibility as you can add and remove crawl sources in between crawls. Firstly, you have the website crawl. This will crawl all pages on the site itself. You can select whether or not you'd like to crawl subdomains and both HTTP and HTTPS pages. Next, you can import your sitemaps. DeepCrawl will automatically discover any sitemaps in the robots.txt file, or you can add any additional sitemaps using the text box. You can also integrate DeepCrawl with Google Analytics by hitting the Add Google account in the top right hand corner, or by using the user settings from the drop down menu. Google Analytics takes data from the last 30 days. If you'd like to use more historical data, you can upload a CSV. You can also use this functionality to upload data from any other analytics package. Please note that the columns must match those in the example CSV, which you can download here. Next, DeepCrawl can identify your most valuable and linked to pages by uploading backlink source data, and then crawl the URLs to discover backlinks to your site and competitors. Finally, you can upload a specific list of URLs to crawl. DeepCrawl will then only crawl these specific URLs, which is handy if you're double checking a recently fixed list of URLs, or perhaps are working with your PPC team to validate the URLs and that those PPC pages are well linked. The penultimate step is to set limits. You can limit the number of requests DeepCrawl makes to your site each second. You can even limit the speed to only crawl on certain days of the week at certain times. Please note that DeepCrawl won't necessarily crawl the site at that speed, but it is the maximum number of requests it will make per second. Once you've set the crawl speed, you can select how far into your site's architecture you want the crawler to go, from level 1 to 100. Then you must choose how many URLs you actually want to crawl, and finally, decide on whether or not to automatically finish when either of these limits are hit, or if you'd like to be notified that there's more to go. At the final step, assuming you don't need to set up any advanced settings, you can hit the Start Crawl button and your crawl will begin immediately. If perhaps you'd like to set up a schedule, you can also do this at this point, from a one-off crawl through to quarterly. Now on to the advanced settings. First, we can decide on the scope of the crawl. Under secondary domains, this is looking at any secondary or alias domains. Or perhaps there's a specific point in the website you'd like to start the crawl from. With include and exclude, you only need to input the path, not the domain itself, to make that life that bit easier. You can have multiple inclusions or exclusions. All you need to do is separate by hitting tab. Included only will only crawl URLs in that path, and excluded will crawl all URLs except those specified. Page grouping is a fantastic feature for anyone managing a site with a large number of URLs, as it not only allows you to generate a report faster and help you spot any patterns, but it also helps you to save those all-important credits. You can set the group's name, specify the URL match, and select which percentage of that path you'd like to crawl. In this instance, 10%. The way DeepCrawl works means that it will crawl the same 10% every time, so your diffing data is completely accurate. If a page goes missing from that sample, we'll report it, and we'll also report on which ones have been added to the sample. Next up, we have the spider settings. The default setting is a dynamic IP, and this is the fastest setting and is usually most appropriate for the majority of cases. Beneath this, we have the static IP. This should be used if you need to whitelist the IP address because you need to crawl a secure site, staging environment, or your site is set up to block certain IPs. Beneath this, we have a list of country-specific IPs. You may wish to use these if your site is calibrated to redirect users to a country-specific site based on their location. With a dynamic IP for this setup, you may just get a number of 302s, so these can be very useful. DeepCrawl also has a handy feature called Stealth Mode, which is really useful for doing competitor analysis. And finally, we have the user agent settings where you can select which user agent you'd like to crawl your site as. You can even input a custom user agent if necessary. Next up is extraction. This is where you can utilise DeepCrawl's crawling capabilities to double up as a scraping tool to extract any piece of information in the HTML. This may be to understand a breadcrumb path, find any zero results pages, check that your analytics tags have been implemented correctly or if they're missing, or even identify any pages with incorrect or missing information. Then we have the test settings. Here is where one of the main benefits of DeepCrawl can be set up. You can test any changes you make to the robots file before you push them live, avoiding any accidental blocking of key pages or worse still the entire site by using the robots overwrite functionality. You can also crawl a staging environment with DeepCrawl by inputting the test site domain, any basic authentication, and remember to check the box again to instruct the crawler to crawl the test site rather than the live site. If your site is hosted on a non-public DNS, you can add this in by using the Create New Custom DNS button. Particularly for sites using session IDs, tracking parameters, or faceted navigation, removing parameters can be a cost-effective option, as this feature allows you to mirror Google Search Console setting for any parameters you've already stripped out. URL rewriting can be used to match uppercase to lowercase to avoid duplication, or when crawling an AJAX site using the escape fragment solution. Just be sure to strip out the hashbang fragments from all URLs. Finally, with the report setup, you can specify a URL to ping once your crawl has been completed. This is particularly handy if you have built your own tool and would like to use the DeepCrawl data. As a side note, you can access all of our API documentation using the drop-down menu here. You can also specify which person or number of people are emailed when a crawl has paused or indeed completed. Finally, with report settings, you can completely customize which metrics show which results. Essentially, DeepCrawl follows Google's guidelines as closely as possible. However, you may wish to identify the worst offending slow loading pages. You can change the max load time to 5 seconds from the standardized 2. Going back up to the top, there are 2 final things to point out before we can start the crawl. You can find advanced settings a lot quicker by using the search bar here. Perhaps you might want to find specifically any settings related to testing or spider IPs. And you can also copy any advanced settings automatically from another project that has already been set up, saving you a lot of time and energy. Once we're ready to start the crawl, we hit Start Crawl, and away we go. Crawling starts almost instantly, and as you can see here, you have the ability to adjust settings on the fly under Crawl Settings. You can change the speed at which the crawler is going. You can change the levels that the crawler actually goes to, as well as the maximum number of URLs. You can see the number of URLs crawled and the current speed at which the crawler is running. This is represented by the area graph and is updated in real time. Just below we have the URLs crawled and levels line graph. This shows not only how many URLs have been crawled, but how deep the crawler is into the site. Finally, at the bottom of the page we can see all of the crawls that have ever been run within this project. As well as the ability to share via copy link or via email. That pretty much concludes the overview of the project dashboard, crawl setup and advanced settings. If you'd like to have a more comprehensive look around the DeepCrawl tool, please do not hesitate to get in touch with a member of the DeepCrawl team. Thanks for watching.